The day I discovered my mother had stolen my inheritance to pay for my sister's lavish wedding, something inside me broke. What she didn't realize was that the money she took wasn't just cash. It was my future, my father's legacy. So I decided to take everything back and make sure neither of them got a penny. Before we dive into this story, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you never miss a tale of justice. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments. Okay, let's get into it. When I tell people that my own mother stole from me, they usually look shocked, like I've said something impossible. But betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it wears the face of the person who raised you. It all started 3 years after my father passed away. He had worked his entire life to build something for our family. A small estate, a modest house, and some savings meant to help me and my sister build our futures. My father was fair. He had made sure we'd both have a piece of his hard-earned legacy. I believed that. I trusted that. But trust, I've learned, can be a fragile thing. When I got the call from the bank that my inheritance account had been consolidated, I didn't even know what that meant. I thought it was a mistake, some bureaucratic mix-up. My mother handled the estate. I had no reason to doubt her. She always said she was taking care of everything. Then I found the receipts. Not the kind you expect to see for bills or property taxes, no. These were for florists, catering deposits, designer dresses, all charged to an account that was supposed to hold my father's final gift to me. My mother had stolen my inheritance. And the worst part? It wasn't even for herself. She'd used it to fund my younger sister's wedding. A wedding so grand it looked like something out of a movie. White horses, a custom gown, a venue that could have paid off my mortgage twice over. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She didn't even look guilty. She simply said, "You're older. You'll understand one day. Your sister deserves a good start." That was the moment something cold settled inside me. I realized that in her eyes, I wasn't a daughter anymore, just a resource, something to be used for her favorite child's happiness. I wish I could tell you I shouted or cried or threw things, but I didn't. I just stood there, staring at her, as the world I thought I knew shifted beneath my feet. My mother had crossed a line, and she had no idea what I was capable of when pushed that far. Before everything fell apart, my life was simple. Ordinary even. I worked as a school counselor, lived in a small apartment just outside the city, and spent most weekends visiting my mother and sister. We weren't the picture-perfect family, but we had our rhythm. I thought we understood each other. I was the dependable one, the one who remembered birthdays, fixed problems, and showed up early to family dinners. My mother used to say I was her rock, though, looking back, it sounds more like she meant her safety net. My sister Emily was the opposite. She was charming, impulsive, and endlessly adored. Growing up, she had a way of getting what she wanted, not by demanding it, but by looking helpless until someone swooped in to fix things for her. That someone was usually me or Mom. When Dad was alive, he was the balance between us. He'd always remind Mom that love wasn't measured in gifts or attention. But after he passed, the balance vanished. My mother filled the void with control, over the estate, over Emily's choices, and eventually over mine. At first, I didn't question it. She was grieving. We all were. She insisted on handling Dad's estate, for everyone's benefit, and I'd believed her. It made sense. She'd always been the planner, the one with folders and ledgers, color-coded bills stacked neatly on the kitchen table. Every Sunday I'd visit her, bringing groceries, checking in, trying to keep things normal. Emily was often there too, twirling her engagement ring in the light, chatting about venues and photographers, while Mom listened like she was hearing about a royal coronation. I noticed the difference in how Mom spoke to us. With Emily, her tone was soft, indulgent. She'd laugh and call her my baby girl. With me, her tone was clipped, almost managerial. "You're doing well," she'd say, "so you don't need as much help." I brushed it off. It wasn't worth fighting over. That's what I kept telling myself. But little signs started to pile up. On evening, I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. My name came up, followed by a pause, and then my mother's voice saying, "She won't mind. She's practical." I remember that word, practical. It's how people describe someone who doesn't complain when you take advantage of them. Another time, I caught a glimpse of a spreadsheet on Mom's desk. It had columns labeled Emily.wedding costs and estate allocation. When I asked about it, she closed the laptop so quickly it nearly caught her hand. She laughed it off, claiming she was just organizing things. I wanted to believe her, I really did. Looking back, I think I ignored those signs because the alternative was too painful. Admitting that my own mother might not see me as family, just as a resource. The truth was, our normal world was already breaking apart long before the money disappeared. I just hadn't realized it yet. And as my mother and sister drew closer, united by their shared excitement over the wedding, I found myself slowly being pushed out. I'd get half-hearted invitations to fittings or tastings, but I knew they didn't really want me there. I was an outsider in my own family. Still, I held on to hope. I thought maybe once the wedding was over, we'd go back to being close. Maybe my mother would finally have time to sit with me, to talk about Dad, to heal. But that hope died the day I discovered what she'd done. It's strange how betrayal doesn't come with thunder or lightning. Sometimes it's a quiet thing, a simple realization that the people you trusted most have decided you don't matter as much as their comfort. And yet, even after everything, I wasn't ready to fight back. Not yet. Because the line, the one between disappointment and fury, hadn't been crossed. At least, not until what happened next. It happened on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. The kind of day you don't expect to change your life. I had just finished a long day at work, helping a student through a rough patch, and all I wanted was to make a cup of tea and collapse on the couch, but then my phone buzzed with a message from my bank. At first, I thought it was spam, just another notification I could ignore. But as I opened it, my heart gave a slow, uneasy thud. It said, "Your account balance has reached the minimum threshold." That couldn't be right. My inheritance account, the one tied to Dad's estate, had over $100,000 in it. Money I hadn't touched since the settlement. Because it wasn't just money, it was sacred. It was the piece of my father I still had. I logged in, the screen loaded, and just like that my stomach dropped. The account was nearly empty, a few $100s left. A digital echo of what used to be my security, my future. For a long moment, I sat frozen. My first thought was that there had been a mistake, a hack maybe, or a clerical error. I called the bank immediately, my hands trembling so badly that I had to steady them on the edge of the table. The representative was polite but detached. "Yes, ma'am, it appears the account was consolidated into another under the same executor." "Executor?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "The executor of the estate, your mother." The room went quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat, fast and uneven. "Can you tell me where the funds were transferred?" I asked, though a part of me already knew. "I'm afraid I can't disclose that without authorization," she replied. "But it appears the transfer was legitimate under the estate's management." I thanked her, hung up, and sat there staring at the wall. The next day I drove to my mother's house. I didn't even bother calling ahead. I knew she'd find a way to avoid me if I did. When I arrived, she was in the living room, surrounded by bridal magazines and fabric samples. Emily was there too, glowing and carefree, talking about floral arrangements. I stood in the doorway, holding my bag tightly. "Mom," I said, my voice calm. Too calm. "We need to talk." She looked up, startled, but only for a second. Then she smiled, that composed, motherly smile she always used when she wanted to look in control. "Of course, dear. What's wrong?" I didn't sit down. "Where's my inheritance?" Emily's chatter stopped instantly. Mom blinked, then tilted her head slightly, as if I'd asked about the weather. "What do you mean?" "You moved the money," I said. "The bank told me." There was a pause, brief, but enough to tell me everything I needed to know. Her eyes flickered just for a moment, and then she sighed. "Oh, that." But she said it like it was nothing, like she hadn't taken something sacred. "I used some of the money to help with the wedding," she said, waving a hand as if explaining away a minor household expense. "It's all within the family. You'll be fine, sweetheart. You have your job, your life." "But Emily needed it more," I cut in, my voice shaking now, the calm cracking at the edges. My mother's expression hardened. "She's starting a new chapter. She deserves a good beginning. Your father would have wanted that." I stared at her, words forming and dissolving on my tongue. "He also wanted fairness," I said quietly. "That's why he divided everything equally." But she wasn't listening. She'd already turned away, fussing with a stack of invitations. "You're overreacting," she said. "This is family money. You'll get your share later." Later, a meaningless promise from someone who'd already decided her definition of family didn't include me. Then Emily laughed, a soft, nervous sound, and said, "Come on, don't make this a big deal, okay? You should be happy for me." Happy? Something snapped inside me, not a dramatic explosion, more like glass cracking under pressure. I looked at them both, my mother calm and self-righteous, my sister blissfully unbothered, and I realized they didn't see me as a person anymore. I was just a means to an end. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. "Good," my mother replied without looking up. "We need to focus on the wedding." That was it. That was the moment the line was crossed. I walked out of that house knowing one thing with perfect clarity. They had taken from me without guilt, without hesitation, and they believed I'd never fight back. They had no idea who I could become when pushed too far. I spent the next few weeks in a haze, not the kind that comes from sadness, but the kind born of disbelief. Every time I thought about what my mother had done, I caught myself hoping it was all a misunderstanding, that she'd call, apologize, say she'd make it right. But the call never came. Instead, she doubled down. At first, it was small things. A social media post of my sister's bridal shower, captioned, "So proud of my beautiful girl. Every mother's dream come true." The table was covered in flowers and gold-trimmed plates, all of it paid for with my father's money, my money. Then came the family whispers. Cousins calling to say they'd heard I'd refused to help with the wedding. Apparently, my mother had been telling everyone that I was being selfish about the inheritance, that I didn't understand what family sacrifice meant. Each word spread like oil on water, slick, fast, and impossible to clean up. I tried calling her once, thinking maybe she'd see reason. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. She answered in her calm, clipped voice. "You really shouldn't make this harder than it needs to be," she said. "You're embarrassing yourself. People are starting to talk." "People are talking because you lied," I replied. "Watch your tone," she snapped. "I'm still your mother." And that was that. She hung up before I could say another word. I thought about showing up to confront her again, but part of me knew it was pointless. I wasn't dealing with a misunderstanding anymore. I was dealing with pride, entitlement, and control. It was as if she'd rewritten the family narrative. She was the selfless mother, sacrificing her time and resources to give her youngest daughter the perfect wedding. And I was the bitter, ungrateful one who couldn't be happy for her own sister. I tried to focus on work, but it was impossible. Every break, every drive home, my mind circled back to her words. "You'll be fine. She deserves a good start." Fine. She had no idea how deep that word cut. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about being erased, treated as if my father's love, my future, my place in the family were negotiable. Then came the next blow. One afternoon, I got a call from my aunt, my father's sister. Her voice was hesitant. "Honey," she said, "I don't want to get in the middle of things, but your mother, she's been telling people you agreed to use your inheritance for Emily's wedding. Is that true?" I could feel my throat tighten. "No," I said flatly. "That's not true." A long pause, then a quiet, "I thought so." It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my reputation, my father's legacy, and the truth. My mother wasn't just covering up what she'd done. She was rewriting history. The final insult came a week later when I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was an invitation, ivory paper, gold lettering embossed with Emily and her fiancé's names. At the bottom, in fine print, it read, "Special thanks to my sister for her generosity and love." Generosity? It felt like a slap in the face. I stood there in my kitchen, holding that invitation, and realized she wasn't just taking from me, she was mocking me. She'd taken what wasn't hers and turned me into the fool who supposedly gave it willingly. And my mother? She let it happen. She encouraged it. Each post, each comment, each whispered story reinforced her version of events, and the more she lied, the smaller I felt. Not out of shame, but out of the terrifying realization that she truly believed she'd done nothing wrong. That was when I stopped waiting for her to fix it. I stopped crying, too. Something else took its place, a quiet, focused resolve. If she wanted to play this like a game, I'd play, but not on her terms. What she didn't know was that my father had been meticulous about his paperwork. I didn't understand everything about wills and estates, but I remembered the lawyer explaining something about clauses, protections built into the agreement. At the time, I hadn't paid much attention. Now those details came rushing back like fragments of a puzzle I'd forgotten existed. For the first time since this began, I started to see a way forward. But before I could act, she did something that made the situation unbearable, something that forced me to stop being quiet and start planning. It was the week before the bridal rehearsal when I finally broke. I hadn't seen my mother or sister in almost a month, but every day seemed to bring a fresh reminder of what they'd done. Pictures of dress fittings, venue updates, tagged posts about family love and support. Each one chipped away at me until there was nothing left but quiet anger. That afternoon, I went to visit my father's grave. I brought white lilies, his favorite. The cemetery was calm, the kind of stillness that feels almost sacred. I stood there for a long time, staring at his name etched into the stone, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad. I let them take what you left me." I wasn't sad anymore. I was determined. On the drive home, I stopped at a gas station and grabbed a coffee just to have something warm to hold. That's when I saw my sister's car at the next pump. I tried to ignore it, but she saw me and waved enthusiastically, walking over in her heels like she was floating. "Hey," she said cheerfully, as if nothing had happened. "Oh my God, you have to come to the rehearsal dinner. It's going to be so fancy. You'll love it." I looked at her and felt my pulse steady. "You use my money for all this?" I said quietly. Her smile faltered. "Mom handled that. You know how she is. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I asked. "That was Dad's gift to me. You knew that." She rolled her eyes. "You're always so dramatic. It's not like you needed it. You don't even have kids or a husband. Mom just wanted to help me out. We're family. You should be happy for me." Her words hit me harder than she knew. She wasn't just repeating Mom's lines. She believed them, completely. To her, it wasn't theft. It was entitlement dressed as logic. I didn't say another word. I just turned, got in my car, and drove away. My hands were shaking, but not from anger, from clarity. That was the last time I saw her before everything changed. Later that evening, I sat in my apartment and opened the folder where I'd kept my father's documents. The will, the correspondence, the lawyer's business card. I'd tucked them away years ago, thinking I'd never need them. But as I read through them now, I found something that made my breath catch. There it was. In plain text. A clause that stated any premature withdrawal or misuse of estate funds by the executor could trigger a full legal review and temporary asset freeze. My mother had signed her name beside that clause. It was like my father had left me one final gift, a way to protect myself. I called his old lawyer the next morning. He remembered me immediately and sounded surprised when I explained what had happened. He asked for documentation, and I sent everything I had. Within hours, he confirmed what I suspected. What my mother had done was illegal. The law was clear. The money wasn't hers to touch. We spoke for almost an hour. He walked me through the process, the paperwork, and the timing. He suggested we could file quietly, without alerting her right away. That way the estate could be frozen before she had time to move anything else. When I hung up, I sat back and let the feelings sink in. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I wanted balance. The kind of justice that doesn't shout or gloat, but simply sets things right. That night, I wrote a letter to my mother. I didn't send it, but I needed to get the words out. I told her how much I had loved her, how much I had trusted her, and how deeply she had hurt me. Then I wrote the final line. "You took from me because you thought I wouldn't fight. You were wrong." When I put the pen down, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The plan had begun to form. Quiet, deliberate, unstoppable. The day the lawyer called me back, I remember exactly where I was, sitting by the kitchen window with a mug of tea that had long gone cold. His voice was calm but firm as he said, "We have everything we need to proceed." Those words settled over me like a warm blanket. For weeks I'd felt helpless, like a bystander in my own story. But now I had a direction. My father's clause, that single paragraph buried in legal jargon, had become my weapon. The first step was simple. Initiate the review. It would quietly trigger a freeze on the estate account that my mother had been using. She wouldn't know until she tried to access it again. The lawyer assured me the process was confidential until formal notice was served. That night, I went through my emails, my bank statements, anything that could show the timeline of what happened. Every transfer, every message from my mother about relimiting funds. I gathered them all into one neat file. It felt methodical, almost surgical. It wasn't about spite anymore. It was about truth. A few days later, the lawyer submitted the documentation. He told me it might take up to 2 weeks before any movement showed. I waited in silence, resisting every urge to reach out or check in. I didn't want to tip her off. Then, one Saturday morning, my phone buzzed. A short text from my mother appeared on the screen. "Did you do something with the bank? There's a problem with the account. Call me now." I didn't respond. She called twice, then again. By the fourth call, she left a voicemail, her tone sharp, almost panicked. "You have no idea what you're doing." But I did. That was the whole point. Over the next few days, I heard from relatives. My aunt mentioned that my mother had been stressed about some financial issue and that my sister's wedding planner had suddenly paused preparations. Apparently, the final payments couldn't be processed. I said little, just listened. The quiet satisfaction I felt wasn't from revenge. It was from knowing the truth was starting to surface. A week later, I received an official update. The investigation was underway. The bank confirmed that a portion of the estate funds had been withdrawn without proper authorization. The lawyer told me, almost delicately, that there was a strong case for reclaiming those funds and reassigning control of the estate. When I hung up, I sat in silence. The same house where I'd once cried over betrayal now felt lighter, as if the air itself had shifted. A few days after that, my sister showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked pale and furious. "Mom's saying the bank froze everything," she snapped. "What did you do?" "I didn't invite her in. I just made sure Dad's wishes were respected," I said evenly. "You're ruining everything," she said, her voice breaking. "Do you know how much we've already spent?" Her words confirmed it. She knew. She knew the money wasn't theirs, but what struck me most wasn't guilt or remorse in her voice. It was fear. "You used my inheritance to pay for your dream wedding," I said quietly. "Now you get to deal with the reality of that choice." She glared at me, tears in her eyes. "You're heartless." "No," I said softly. "I just finally stopped being your doormat." She left in a storm of slammed doors and angry footsteps. I didn't follow. That evening, I received one final message from my lawyer. The court had approved the reassignment. The estate account was now solely under my control. Any further access by my mother or sister was legally barred. I stared at the message for a long time. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. But it felt like justice taking shape. In that moment, I realized something my father must have understood when he wrote that clause. Trust should be earned, not assumed. And when someone betrays it, the best revenge isn't rage or noise. It's calm, quiet accountability. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let the calm wash over me. For the first time in months, I finally felt free. The news spread faster than I expected. Within a week, everyone in the family knew that I had taken control of the estate. Some called to check in, others to scold me for creating drama. I didn't bother defending myself anymore. Let them think what they wanted. I had the paperwork, the proof, and most importantly, my father's words backing me. My mother, though, didn't stay silent for long. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the trees, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, she was standing there, arms crossed, face hard as stone. "We need to talk," she said. I stepped aside and let her in, though every instinct told me not to. She sat on the couch like she owned the place, scanning the room before finally meeting my eyes. "You've embarrassed this family," she began. "Do you have any idea how it looks that you went behind my back?" "I didn't go behind your back," I said evenly. "You went behind mine when you took my inheritance." She flinched, but recovered quickly. "I used that money for your sister's wedding, for family. You don't understand responsibility. You never have." I almost laughed. "Responsibility? You mean lying to me, stealing from me, and signing my father's name on forms you didn't have the right to touch?" Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to being challenged. I leaned forward. Dad trusted you to honor his wishes. You betrayed him. And me. You don't get to twist that into virtue." For a moment she just sat there, her expression flickering between anger and disbelief. Then she stood. "You've always been ungrateful," she said coldly. "You'll regret this." "I already did," I said quietly. "But not anymore." She stormed out, the front door slamming so hard it rattled the picture frames. That was the last time I saw her in person. 2 weeks later, I received confirmation that the legal process had concluded. The estate was officially closed in my favor. The remaining funds were restored to my account, and all unauthorized withdrawals were documented. My mother's name was permanently removed from the file. A month later, I heard that my sister's wedding had been drastically downsized. The grand venue was canceled, replaced by a modest backyard ceremony. I wasn't invited, of course, and I didn't expect to be. But I saw pictures online. Her forced smile told me everything I needed to know. There was no joy in what I felt, just closure. They had taken from me out of greed and entitlement, and in the end, they lost the very thing they valued most: control. I took a few quiet weeks to rebuild my life. I finally used part of my inheritance for something my father would have loved. I bought a small cottage near the coast, a place with an old oak tree in the yard, and enough peace to think clearly again. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the branches just right, I sit outside with a cup of coffee and imagine my father there beside me. I tell him what happened, how his claws saved me, how his lessons about self-respect finally made sense. I no longer feel anger toward my mother or sister. Pity, maybe, because people like that never truly learn. But me? I learned exactly what I needed to. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. It's the silence after the storm, the peace that follows truth. That's what my father left me. Not just money, but strength.